Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 players that I can't stop drafting in 2024 fantasy football. 5 players that I love right now based upon their current ADPs. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my 5 players that I can't stop drafting in 2024 fantasy football. We begin with the first player that I can't stop drafting, and that is Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions, current underdog ADP wide receiver 5 at pick number 6. Now, if you are in a more running back heavy draft room, then you are going to be able to potentially get Amon-Ra St. Brown at pick 8 or 9, depending on if people start drafting Bijan and Breece a little bit earlier. Christian McCaffrey, even in the more wide receiver heavy rooms, is typically either the number 1 or the number 2 overall pick. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, entering into last season, was a player that I was incredibly high on. I loved what I've seen out of Amon-Ra St. Brown thus far throughout his career, and I thought that last season he was going to be able to build on that and play even better. And boy, was Amon-Ra St. Brown amazing. He was the wide receiver 4 in PPR last season and the wide receiver 3 in PPR points per game, playing in 16 games last season, having 164 targets, 10.3 per game, ranking 5th, 119 receptions, 7.4 per game, 2nd, 1,515 receiving yards, 94.7 per game, number 3, and 10 total touchdowns, 5th at wide receiver. So every single metric, targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns, he was top 5 in last season, doing so in an offense that was incredibly exciting to watch. And I believe we are going to get yet another exciting offense out of Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions in 2024. Now, there's already been a lot of talk about Jameson Williams, and I even talked about Jameson Williams as a sleeper that I like in fantasy football drafts in the last video that came out on Friday. Check that out if you haven't seen it already, but wait until the end of this video or you skedaddle, because you're going to want to hear this video as well. But I talked about how Dan Campbell has been really pumping up Jameson Williams. Jared Goff has talked about him, and I do think we're to see a lot more Jameson Williams compared to the first couple years of his career. But when push comes to shove, we know who the guy is in this offense, and that is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Regardless of Sam Laporta's usage, regardless of the fact that David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are an explosive 1-2 punch, the thunder and lightning in this Lions offense, we know that Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to get force-fed 10+ targets basically every single game. He was 7th in yards per route run last season, 12th in true catch rate, and 5th in contested catch rate. A lot of people like to make fun of Jared Goff, but ultimately Jared Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown was 8th in terms of target accuracy. Again, even if Jameson Williams is able to emerge in this offense, I still believe that Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of the safest wide receivers you can draft in fantasy football, and his upside is also incredibly high. I wouldn't be shocked at all if at the end of the season, we see that Amon-Ra St. Brown was the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football. When you see as many targets as Amon-Ra St. Brown does per game, when you have the ability to make defenders miss like Amon-Ra St. Brown has, when you have the ability to create separation like Amon-Ra St. Brown, I truly believe that he is a no-brainer pick inside the first round, and I feel incredibly safe doing so. At number 2, we got Malik Nabers, wide receiver of the New York Giants, current underdog ADP wide receiver 18 at pick 27.4. Now, underdog is notoriously a website where drafters are more wide receiver heavy. So just like how Amon-Ra St. Brown's coming off the board at pick number 6, in a lot of your leagues, you could potentially see him at pick 8, maybe even pick 9. Malik Nabers coming off the board at pick 27.4. In the middle of the 3rd round, there are going to be leagues where you could probably get Malik Nabers inside of the 4th round. And it's funny because we talked about how safe Amon-Ra St. Brown is, right? How he essentially is like wrapping a Trojan around your fantasy football squad. An incredibly safe pick. To many, Malik Nabers is the exact opposite. Now, the reason why, to many, Malik Nabers is not all that safe of a pick has nothing to do with Malik Nabers and everything to do with the New York Football Giants, and especially their starting quarterback, Daniel Jones. Now, I don't expect Daniel Jones to really turn himself into one of the better quarterbacks in this league, but I do expect him to play better than what we saw last season, and I expect the Giants as a whole to be a better team than last season. Now, are they going to get frisky in the playoffs and potentially take out a team like the cold, like Minnesota Vikings in 2022 in the playoffs, make it to the second round? Probably not. Probably not, but I do think that under Brian Daboll, this is an offense that is going to get their juice back. And this is an offense that has one clear number one weapon. Darren Waller decided to go rap. He decided to get divorced from Kelsey Plum, his wife, who plays in the WNBA. And he ended up fucking retiring. So the best player on this offense, with Saquon Barkley now chilling in Philadelphia, is by far and away Malik Nabers. You look at the wide receiver core in New York for the Giants. You got guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, some exciting players at times. But Malik Nabers is the premier number one option, the head honcho, the head of the table in this New York Giants receiving room. He was the 6th overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft, and I think if Marvin Harrison Jr., Maserati Marv, wasn't in this draft class, it was very likely that Malik Nabers would have been the first wide receiver selected to the Arizona Cardinals. 13 games played last year at LSU with the Heisman, Jaden Daniels, 89 receptions on 130 targets for 1,569 yards, 17.9 yards per reception. He had a 31.9% target share in that LSU offense. Who else was on the LSU offense? Brian Thomas Jr., who also got drafted in the first round by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he scored 14 total touchdowns. This guy is an amazing athlete, 93rd in 40-yard dash, 93rd percentile, 85th in speed score, 98th in burst score, and 81st in catch radius. We've talked about how at points there have been some exciting plays out of guys like Wan'Dale, Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, but they don't even sit in the same pedigree as a guy like Malik Nabers. They cannot even hold his jockstrap. Malik Nabers is an amazing prospect. And I get, while the Giants offense as a whole probably won't be amazing, they will be far from fan-fucking-tastic like the Fantastic Four. I think Malik Nabers is going to get the ball thrown to him a gazillion times every single game. It is the same argument I have for Marvin Harrison. The only difference between Marvin Harrison and Malik Nabers is Marvin Harrison has Kyler Murray, a quarterback that a lot of people trust, me included. Malik Nabers has Daniel fucking Jones, a guy who looks like in 3 years he's going to be selling Hondas, right? He looks like your accountant, but instead he's the starting quarterback of the Giants who got paid a gazillion dollars last offseason. So again, I'm not going to sit here and, really talk up Daniel Jones, but I don't think you need Mahomes or Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud. You don't need that level of a quarterback for Malik Nabers to be successful. Does it make him a little bit more risky? Of course, but I also think Daniel Jones is better than what we saw out of him last season. At number 3, we got Jake Ferguson, tight end of the Dallas Cowboys, underdog ADP, tight end 9 at pick 86.2. Jake Ferguson last year was the tight end 10 in PPR and the tight end 10 in PPR points per game, playing in 17 games last season with 16 starts. He had over 100 targets, 6 per game with 102 targets. Number 7 at tight end. He ranked 9th in receptions, 4.2 per game with 71 receptions, 8th in terms of receiving yards, 761, and then 5 total touchdowns, 7th. Jake Ferguson was a guy that was very exciting last season in a great offense in Dallas. And while myself and a lot of other people would have thought that the Dallas Cowboys would have looked to maybe bring in a true number 2 weapon next to CeeDee Lamb, or maybe they bring in a real explosive running back that could take up a shit ton of targets, right? Maybe. Now, Austin Ekeler last year was far from explosive. The guy was running like he was stuck in quicksand. The guy was running like he was stuck in some molasses. But a running back like Austin Ekeler circa 2021, 2022, right? When he was on top of the world, right? Maybe they're going to look to bring in someone to just maybe take away some targets to where maybe Jake Ferguson would have to take a back seat. Now, regardless of who they drafted, Jake Ferguson still would have been fantasy relevant because the Dallas Cowboys offense is that good. But they don't really do anything, right? They don't bring in any additional wide receiver help that would really throw a wrench into this situation, into how many targets we could see Ferguson get game in and game out. They still are relying on CeeDee Lamb, who obviously is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I don't need to give him the gawk 9,000 special here if you guys know how good CeeDee Lamb is. They have Brandon Cooks, who was kind of just hot and cold last year, and the Las Vegas Raiders took Michael Gallup off their hands. So we have Jake Ferguson, who's a very solid red zone threat, and an offense that I expect to be really solid again during the regular season with Dak Prescott under center. Why not like Jake Ferguson? 6th in target accuracy, 15th in yards per target, 13th in yards per reception. Jake Ferguson doesn't need to have all of the skills to pay the bills to be successful here in Dallas, right? He doesn't need to be a Sam Laporta, a Travis Kelce, a George Kittle meet Timbers level talent to be successful. All he has to do is fall ass backwards into targets, which is going to come his way because the team didn't really add around Jake Ferguson. So again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Jake Ferguson is one of the most fantastic, one of the most elite tight ends in the National Football League, but it wouldn't really be surprising if he put up the same stats as last year, and then instead of 5 touchdowns, he scores 8 or 9, and then he skyrockets into being a top 5 guy, and if maybe he sees a slight uptick in targets, then even if he doesn't score 7, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns, he could still be really good. So Jake Ferguson seems like another guy that's kind of a no-brainer, a really safe pick at tight end. And he also has large upside because, again, there's a Dallas Cowboys team that might be laying a pipe for that ass like they're a plumber late into games where they're able to run up the score. And even if CeeDee Lamb goes crazy, Jake Ferguson can get his as well. At number 4, we got my guy, Jordan, love me tender, love me sweet, quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, underdog ADP, quarterback 10 at pick 93.5. If you guys have enjoyed thus far, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. So when it comes to picking a quarterback for today's video, I started to kind of keen into Patrick Mahomes. Now, no longer did you have to draft Patrick Mahomes as a top 3 quarterback because currently he's coming off the board as the quarterback 4, right? They add Hollywood Brown, they draft Xavier Worthy. Who knows what Rashee Rice is going to be doing this season because he's clearly going to get a suspension. Maybe he's going to go play with Adam Sandler in the longest yard, link up with Henry Ruggs. But at the end of the day, that's a team that is going to be exciting. Kelce signs extension. It's going to be fun in Kansas City. I think Mahomes is going to have a better season than last year. But you have to pay the quarterback for price. Now, no one would be surprised if Mahomes was the quarterback 1 at the end of the season. But I see Jordan Love's upside. I see Jordan Love's kind of safety, in my opinion. And I think, why would I talk about Patrick Mahomes, who's going significantly higher, when I could talk about a guy that's going as the quarterback 10, close to pick 100, pick 93.5 on Underdog Fantasy, who has the exact same upside? Now, I would be foolish to say that Jaden Riley-Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Throw-Up-a-Dob, Luke Musgrave, and those guys, right? The other weapons they have on their team, Dontavian, John Wicks over there, right? I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that's the same caliber of weapons. But we've seen Jaden Reed be really good. We've seen games out of Luke Musgrave. We've seen Christian Watson with Aaron Rodgers, right? This is a solid weapon core, and Jordan Love absolutely let it rip last season. Essentially, in his rookie year. Sure, did he have action when Rodgers was there? Yes. But never as the true starter, and that's what we saw last season. And this guy Rip the league a new asshole. Quarterback 5 last year. 17 games played with 17 starts. He ranked 5th in pass attempts, 8th in completions, 7th in passing yards, 2nd in passing touchdowns at a 5.5% rate. Now, passing touchdown rate is important because it's kind of easy to understand where things could go wrong or things could go very right. For instance, if you're a quarterback that's really solid and you throw 4.5% passing touchdown rate, then guess what? It's probably going to go up because 5. Not shout out to that guy from Subway because that guy's a bad guy, but shout out to the $5 footlong. 5% is the number, the average, the normal. Love throws for 5.5%. I don't think it's that crazy for him to do something like that again. Now, if Daniel Jones throws 5.5%, that's probably not going to happen again. Number 2, a quarterback, 11 interceptions, 10th, and then 40 carries for 247 rushing yards and 4 total touchdowns. Is Jordan Love going to go out there and run amok on the defense, right? Fucking stiff arm a bastard down the middle, earth, juke a guy out of his shoes, right? Tie the laces of some guy's cleats up and then they fall over. You know what I'm saying? Like Kyler Murray could do, Lamar Jackson, old school Michael Vick, Madden 2004. Is Jordan Love going to do that? Fuck no, baby. But could Jordan Love go out there and rush for 250 rushing yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns again pretty easily? Again, he is on an offense with a lot of talent around him, and Jordan Love himself has proven to be pretty talented. 7th in yards per pass attempt, 8th in fantasy points per dropback, 10th in QBR, 13th in true passer rating. They lose Ron Jones. They bring in Josh Jacobs. Pretty lateral move. Both guys pretty talented in terms of pass catching, but Aaron Jones was far from healthy last season, so if Jacobs able to stay healthy, knock on wood, that should help out Jordan Love. Decent enough offensive line, decent enough weapons. At quarterback number 10, it feels like, again, I get that there's great names ahead of Jordan Love, and there's guys that I love going ahead of Jordan Love at the quarterback position. But at quarterback 10, if you're waiting to draft your quarterback, Jordan Love is kind of like the cutoff for me, because then you get into guys like Jaden Daniels. You get into guys like Caleb Williams, guys that I like. I like both of those rookie quarterbacks, but I just like Jordan Love more. To me, there's a pretty clear tier break after Jordan Love to where a lot more questions come into mind. And then you also get into the kind of range where it's like, okay, maybe I want 2 quarterbacks now. Like, hey, I like Jaden Daniels. I love this upside in this Washington Commanders offense. Maybe now I want to sprinkle Kirk Cousins onto this team. Maybe I want to sprinkle Aaron Rodgers, someone else who I trust a little bit more for week number 1. And right now, I wouldn't say I trust Aaron Rodgers the most, but you get what I mean, right? Where you kind of have to draft 2 quarterbacks. With Jordan Love, you can just take 1. Final guy here, and this is a guy that everyone is going to disagree with. I already know. Old man Zeke, the Wookiee himself, Ezekiel Elliott, back at home. I'm coming home. Running back of the Dallas Cowboys, underdog ADP, running back 40 at pick 129.6. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Nick, it sounded like a little bit earlier when you were talking about Jake Ferguson and you're waxing poetically about him that you don't really like Zeke. And I would be lying to you if I said that I thought that Zeke was still the same prime Zeke, if I thought that Zeke was going to go out there and look like Zeke did 3-4 years ago when he was on top of the mountain Kilimanjaro. But what I will tell you is that while the team and big man Mike McCarthy, the fucking Kool-Aid man himself, keeps talking about how, oh, this is going to be a running back by committee. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a running back by committee at all. But we know what's going to happen on the goal line, and we know who Dak Prescott trusts. Dak Prescott loves a nice check down to Ezekiel Elliott. Is Ezekiel Elliott going to be as efficient as he was back in Dallas a couple of years ago? No, not at all. But we did see Zeke last year have 6 games at the end of the season filling in for Ramondre Stevenson on an absolutely disaster of a team. A dumpster fire team of the New England Patriots with Bill Belichick coaching his last couple of games with Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones under center. 70% of snaps. He played in 6 games with 70% of snaps at the end of the season. He finished inside the top 24 in 4 of those games and inside of the top 6 twice. Again, I'm not saying that Ezekiel Elliott is even all that good. But we saw it last year on a shitty New England team. He could still get it done. He could still get his 3.8, 4 targets per game, and be reliable. The depth chart. They've got Zeke. They've got the midget Deuce Vaughn. They got Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle, I would think, would be kind of the 1B to Zeke's 1A in this offense. Zeke is on an offense that is going to score points. They're going to pour some sugar on me, right? They're going to be pouring the points on. They're going to make it rain. Okay? So, even if Zeke is a shadow of himself, even if Zeke is nowhere close to what he was all those years ago, he is still a competent running back on an offense that's going to use him on the goal line, and he's coming off the board as the running back 40 at pick 129.6. Again, do I think that Ezekiel Elliott is going to turn back the fucking clock and turn back into old Zeke with the crop top and half of his stomach fucking hanging out over his pants? No. But I think he's still good enough to catch a couple of passes every single game, run the rock, and fall ass backwards into maybe 10-plus touchdowns. Think of Gus Edwards last season, except for Ezekiel Elliott. I guess Gus Edwards probably better than Zeke at this point. And I guess technically the Ravens offense, pretty comparable. Today Jr., pretty comparable to the Dallas Cowboys. So, solid offense. I like Zeke. Again, people are going to fucking hate this take. They're going to be like, Nick, you're an idiot. Even though that Zeke last year had a 47th run block rating, even though he ranked 47th in run block rating, he's cooked. He's all the way done. He's finished. I don't think so. I think Zeke still got a little bit of juice left in the tank. Shout out O.J. Simpson, R.I.P. I think Zeke's still got a little bit, just enough left for one more solid fantasy season to get as the running back 40. You could just light that pick on fire. If it's shit, you can just cut him a couple weeks in. Could end up going very, very right. Very, very nice. Shout out to Borats. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Make sure to lightly caress that like button down below. It helps me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. I love you guys all from the bottom of my heart. Hope you guys have a great one. Check out one of the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys as always. Good boy.